Hi, everyone. I'm Kasha, and I'm so thrilled to have Liana here today with me. Liana is the co founder and chief product and technology officer at Pollen. And Pollen is Asia's first liquidation platform, helping businesses get rid of their waste. I'd love for you to share, Liana, what was the reason that you felt inspired to start Pollen?
Well, the fact of the matter is too much waste are already burned or thrown away in landfills in sure amounts, right? And I grew up watching my dad having to help in a lot of business owners with their warehouses to clear a lot of this waste here in Singapore. And I thought to myself, why haven't this problem been solved year on year, right? And I've seen my dad spend a lot of time during weekends trying to organize his mini team of people trying to help you reduce the business waste in the warehouses near Changi here. Changi is east side of Singapore.
Mhm.
There's an industrial area, and there's a lot of manufacturing and also retailers who base their warehouses here. So I wanted to take a different approach to solve the problem, which is using data to help bring transparency, visibility into the fact that if business owners, manufacturers, wholesalers, or retailers don't deal with the business ways in a more sustainable way, we are not going to be doing our job of keeping it away from the landfills and also having to incur a high cost to incinerate those wastes.
Mhm. And how did you come up with the name Pollen? I was curious about that.
Well, I've always loved nature. Growing up, I have indigenous blood from my father's side. I mean, it's natural that my father loved the environment. He was doing, I guess, the job of clearing the business waste away from the area. He even went into, farming nearby. I don't want to get started on that, but that is a testament of how he loved the environment and he wants to keep the environment clean and air clean. Pollen to me is nature's way of liquidation. When the pollen is being released from the environment, it gets taken away by the wind to go and pollinate the surrounding, flowers, right? So I thought that it's a way to kind of take the analogy of unlocking uh, resources that are still usable, they're still good, and spreading it around the environment whoever may need it. So I thought it's unlocking liquidity, and then also using that to spread commerce. And truly, what Pollen does today is really unlocking that potential business ways from some of these warehouses sitting idle into good use, either by end consumers or into other potential buyers and sellers who want to put that product to the end consumer, right, for consumption.
Mhm. Well, I just want to say thank you for doing what you're doing because certainly, it is a problem and somebody has to take care of it. So I appreciate how you have put together your skills and, this inspiration from your father. It sounds like he was a huge inspiration for you to get into this field. I'm curious, now it sounds like you put to that there are 200 tons of waste going that would be going into landfills that you're able to reroute now and help resell for these retailers. That's a humongous amount of waste. How are you managing to do this?
Yes. When we first started, we saw the sheer amount. We're looking at not at pallet size. We're really looking at containers, 20 feet, 40 feet, for each of the orders. Of course, from manufacturers' perspective, they won't want to clear in those sizes, not in e-commerce way, B2C e-commerce, business to consumer e-commerce way of like let me put it on discount on some of the marketplaces and wait for a consumer to put in an order, right? A potential end customer to put in an order that would be like single order. But the with liquidation, rather there's a speed element because all these products, especially with the FMCG products that we're dealing with, they have a limited shelf life. It's like the moment you open up your warehouse, you realize that the clock is already ticking, and you want to clear as fast as possible, and you
Mm-hmm.
also financial, I would say, goal of realizing cost recovery rates, meaning that when they have already produced, they really paid a certain amount of money, put in capital to produce those goods, they have a goal in mind to sort of recover at least some of the costs. This is a cost minimizing business, right? Preventing it
Mm-hmm.
from going to waste and also incurring additional costs to throw it away. It's insane amount of money that goes into even disposal. So if we're already going to dispose, for example, 20, 40 feet containers now, they don't want to saturate their domestic markets. There have been trade channels set up. And a lot of the reality is a lot of the business of manufacturing is you deal with fresh stocks and wholesaling, right? There's a fixed price. What is not known about excess inventory becoming potential business waste, the data of which is what we know, 10 to 20% from the large manufacturer we work with always ends up becoming obsolete
Mm-hmm.
access, or even surplus access, or even potentially a brand exit kind of situation where a new product is being launched in the market, and then they realize that it's not going to work in the market. So what do we do now with this inventory? Do we ship it to some markets? What are some liquidation strategies? So it's amazing because when we first started, we just want to make sure that every order, either 20 feet or 40 feet container worth of goods, don't end up in landfill. But after our first year of business, we successfully clear over 432 kg, 1,000 kg, which means 432 tons worth of potential business waste from landfills. So that's
That's
just a feed
incredible.
of maybe 20 something people, on Pollen. But I know there's more, and we're only clearing maybe 10%, right? 10% of the 10% to 20% of excess inventory. And in Japan alone, there is an estimated of 22 trillion worth of business waste, not potential business waste, already business waste in that economy alone. So just imagine in all the countries, especially in Southeast Asia, now that we are beginning to have an awareness of, excess inventory potentially becoming business waste and having to pay more money to throw that away, not
Mm-hmm.
lasting long-term effects of putting stuff in landfill and burning it, all the CO2 emissions.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to bode well for the future scenario. Therefore, we need to do something. Uh, Even though, the solution may not be perfect, but at least we have to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that it's a win-win for everyone in this case because, certainly the businesses are able to recover some costs. And of course, for the environment, it's a huge win as well for us. Um, what is it that you feel, has been your biggest challenge with getting this going, with getting it set up?
Well,
I know that's a
since
big question.
yeah, I mean, perfect. We're in a leadership, venture podcast, right? So, what if the I would say the strategic alignment with what the corporates are seeing they want to achieve, and also the kind of the opposing, I would say, opposing environmental impact goals, right? In terms of measuring CO2, measuring the distance of the business waste traveling. You're technically, when you resell to overseas markets, when you have that option, you're really, really, what you're saying is you're sort of exporting your business waste, potential business waste, into other countries. But it's not business waste yet. If there is still shelf life,
Hmm.
the consumers in that market can consume it. So that is one, I would say, lesser evil. The fact that we cannot shy away from the fact that we're doing in some way. One of the ways of liquidation is exporting potential business waste. So that is the reality. However, that works for manufacturers because of the cost recovery goal. They have the financial sort of goal to work towards. In fact, you'll be surprised to know that business waste departments today are being managed by the finance team or finance department in a large MNC.
Hmm.
Why is
Okay.
that? Because it's dealing with depreciating assets. That's how it's being classified, I would say, on the P&L.
That's interesting.
So
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yes, yes, it is. So, for example, one of our larger customers, L'Oreal, have recently put together a business waste team, and it's being headed by someone with a finance background. And also with the macro trend of ESG reporting, more corporates, more than ever, have to provide transparency in terms of how much depreciating assets and potential business waste are being cleared away from the landfills, from being disposed of. What did they do instead? Throwing away and burning those things, and report that as part of the ESG reporting.
Mhm. Okay, and so that goes into their ESG reporting. Are you seeing them, really paying a lot of attention to that? Because I'm hearing, mixed things about how companies are taking that seriously. Some seem to be sort of um, not necessarily putting in the legwork to fulfill their obligations. It's just interesting hearing different things from different people. So I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't. It's there is a desire. I can say there's a desire, there's an awareness to need to do better, but a question is how do we get there, right? So the thing we're working
Mhm.
with startups is that we may suggest solutions, and we go to market with a hypothesis, and we form and test a hypothesis, and we think that this may need a marketplace solution, for example, giving them the optionality of now, instead of relying on their like few buyers that they are working with to liquidate through brokers. What are some better ways to work with brokers that would allow them to get access to the data, so that they can do a better job of supplementing it in their ESG reporting? Now, brands especially, they really care about the brands. They really care about not having their products or visibility of the prices that they liquidate fall into the wrong hands. They don't want
Mhm.
to do that, because it would not only diminish the brand, it would also put the bad, it would diminish and put the brand in negative light. That would impact their even wholesale channel partnerships. So we're mindful of this fact. So as part of our hypothesis formation and gathering, we wanted to test the assumption, right? Do brands, especially manufacturers like Unilever and L'Oreal, do they want to solve this problem of reducing business waste? What are some solutions do they have? And we found out that they want, but it's not something that they can deal with internally,
Mhm.
because they ultimately still want to achieve the cost recovery goals, and therefore the first line of defense is try to sell as much as they can before the products get expired.
Right.
So as a startup, we come in with, okay, now we need to help find buyers. We need to connect them with verified buyers, and they want to also sell privately to international verified international buyers. How to do that? That becomes the sort of your solutioning is to provide a marketplace that is private. We match them with buyers, whose profiles they want to work with. How do we do that? How do we introduce different technologies, basically, to kind of help with that process? Because the world of liquidation traditionally has been very manual, tedious, and it's just intransparent. There's no data shared. You just basically sell the inventory at bulk discount, and then it just goes where you don't track, no traceability of where it ends up. And this middleman brokers, what they do is they don't even tell you that the end buyer that it sells to, right? So that becomes a problem where, hey, why are you exporting your waste into my country, and then this doesn't end up used? But now, using data, right, using a platform, you are centralizing all those operations. You have visibility on last month, how much did you liquidate, which brand, which SKU, it goes where, right? And how much of that, and who is the buyer. So we have to do this because it's necessary, right? It's part of the brand protection requirement, but also it's part of making sure that there is actually, raw data to prove that safeguards were taken, right? To make sure that we don't irresponsibly export waste, we don't irresponsibly dump waste,
Mhm.
and those goods are going to be consumed. And of course, in future, hopefully there will be more sophisticated ways of tracking, and also making sure that some of the raw I would say, output of the data of the sales. We can use that to track environmental impact using, these days we have a lot of CO2 calculations, tonnage. We are tracking tonnage. We are tracking distance. We are tracking volume, right? So what is the GMV of the potential business ways to do both sort of the cost recovery and as well environmental impact? What we're saying is with our methodology, there has to be a middle ground. It doesn't always have to be always pro cross recovery, but using sophisticated machine learning and creating an AI model to now tell manufacturers we want to liquidate to a certain market. And these are the profile of buyers, and these are your potential cost recovery rates for this different expiry shelf life, right? So this is something they can't do. It's intelligence where internally, if just comparing with their set of inventory, it will yield more accurate results, and it will yield them the kind, because what is missing is really who is the buyers and how much they're willing to offer for a product of that different shelf life, right? Instead of a fixed pricing.
Yeah, got you. So it sounds like, with all of the data you're collecting there, that would make you attractive for impact investors. Is that the case? Yeah. Are you finding a lot of interest?
Yeah. So the thing is, when people first come across Pollen, they think, we're just the same old marketplace, right? What is new, right? Because you look at the US, you look at the UK, there are marketplaces like liquidation.com, which is a 10-year-old, more than decades old, I would say, and they're doing very, very well, in $1 billion, right? It's a IPO company, and then there is bstock.com in the UK. Now, for Asia, across the separate markets that we work with, we saw differences. We saw that, yes, when we went in and validated the hypothesis, there's a requirement to match them with verified, international buyers, and they want to sell privately. We saw that certain mechanisms of the marketplace doesn't work. For example, auction stuff. Why that doesn't help, and why that further exacerbates the problem is the idea that, as long as you have some kind of excess inventory, you can just sell it off. You just auction it to the highest bidder, and then that's how you clear. Because, like when I mentioned, our methodology at Pollen is different because it has to be a middle ground. And not that I didn't witness for the years growing up witnessing my dad trying to clear the business waste at a warehouse. Not that we didn't have those annual, I would say, warehouse sales, trying to get rid of the excess inventory we have. But at the end of the day, what happens to goods that are still not being sold? They still have to be thrown away. So there has to be more intelligence. There has to be ways to use data to kind of maximize, where the business waste goes to, right? And this requires us, gathering the knowledge about different markets, different type of buyers, what they are willing to pay for goods manufactured in Southeast Asia to go to where, right? And different intelligence in terms of the, currency, price, demand for slow moving excess inventory. So we are in effect creating a secondary market, part of the circular economy. But at the same time, that has to be done in a way not just for the sake of selling. That's not enough. We need to make sure that we weigh sort of the difference, right, between how do we maximize for cost recovery, how do we also achieve some type of environmental impact, and also making sure manufacturers are comfortable liquidating to that safe buyer in that market, right? Do I trust this buyer? So that's why we have to take a different approach. And what impact investors didn't understand is the fact that the data mode that we're building, in fact, we have a data product called Pollen Slop Index precisely to show you that in order to have the secondary market as part of the circular economy, we need to kind of measure and track the different prices for different shelf life for different brands, different SKU. For example, health and beauty that we started with, you'll be surprised. A shampoo from this manufacturer versus a shampoo from another manufacturer at 3 months expiry date left versus 6 months expiry date left will command different prices. For example, or a shampoo with a 3 months and a shampoo with another 3 months in the same market would cost differently because of the brand, right? Because of the demand. Therefore, you cannot assume that all these goods will all have a fixed pricing, and the buyer will buy it at fixed pricing, because from buyer's perspective in different market, they have freight costs to compute, they have margins to think about, right? So, and then there is the whole element of how much of that quantity of that shampoo I should buy to be worthwhile. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of, I would say, statistical calculation at the end of the day, right? So it's
Yeah.
not so simple to solve the problem so that we get a win-win, both manufacturer's perspective, brand protection, environmental impact. Therefore, yes, I would agree. It's not mere greenwashing. It's the fact that now we have the data of excess inventory potentially becoming business waste, and how we're dealing with that data to make sure that we are maximizing, reducing waste, and using ways to kind of intelligently match different buyers and sellers. That is something that we're trying to do to help reduce business waste. Ultimately, brands don't want people to know how much of it that they have that becomes business waste. Therefore, it warrants a solution. It warrants us looking addressing this problem before it becomes business waste. Because that
Hmm.
data gets out, it would be very bad for the brands.
Yeah, interesting. And so which countries are you operating across right now?
So we have Southeast Asia. I would say all of most of Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and then we have India, which just started to get supply from India,
Hmm.
and we have we are queuing Japan, right? We have Australia, New Zealand, which is not much. I think Australia, New Zealand is doing a far better job. Although I've read some news recently that, with coal situation where they liquidate excess inventory to some recycling companies, but then that didn't end up getting recycled. So that is, receiving some kind of public backlash, like whose responsibility it is to deal with the business waste. Is it their
Hmm.
clients, the recycling companies, or is it the supermarkets themselves to kind of try to use some type of data that we do at Pollen to kind of effectively deal with with excess inventory before it becomes business waste? But I tell you, it's not their main job, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're already in across 7 markets. We're looking to expand, potentially explore geographies like Middle East, where we see a lot of actually demand for slop, strangely. And I think that right now, where we're expanding into newer categories, but we have started with health, beauty, household, and now food. We have also demand from automotive, but however, those have to be in queue, because right now, even where we are today, we have a lot to liquidate.
Hmm. Sounds like you have your hands very full.
Yeah, it definitely needs an ecosystem approach, right? It can't be like, oh, we just want to clear waste and forget about it. No, this hopefully someday requires governments to even allow, the export of business waste, and set up some type of framework for us to do this in a very responsible way.
Hmm. I can hear that, you must be putting in quite a few hours to, to handle all of this, because your team of 20, you said 2021.
Yeah,
I mean,
21.
that's I think I mentioned to you last week when we had a catch up that it's a tremendous amount of impact for the size of your team. It's absolutely incredible. And I'm wondering, in terms of, how you're leading, is there anything that you're doing with your team to really help them, um, to be able to perform? I mean, I imagine just the impact itself that they're having is probably a great driver for them. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you feel drives them. How do you feel that, they're able to pull all of this off?
Well, I have to be honest. The reality of working in an early stage startup, everyone multi hats, and you're right, because it's mission driven. This is a mission driven business. Everyone that we hired passes our ETC values framework, right? ETC stands for empathy, T stands for transparency. And sometimes I like to think of transparency builds trust, and the other T. And then the last C, it's curiosity. You have to be curious. It's okay to be a noob. You don't know everything. It's okay to ask questions. But the failing of an individual or the company, if they don't ask any questions and they assume, for us, it's okay to not know everything, but ask
Hmm.
questions, ask for help, right? And of course, I like to tell my co-founder, no, the last C should also be creativity. So,
Right.
but we have to keep it simple: ETC, empathy, transparency, and curiosity. Everyone passes that, and everyone at the company, I would say, for the first, you know, 20 employees, we really scrutinize and check for the empathy, because yeah, that's when things really run really well. It's easy, everyone is working well. But the chance is when times are difficult, how do we communicate with each other? Is it with empathy, or do we always just assume things, and then there's tension and resentment build up? So I think the leaning on into the values framework, that really helped us. Second thing, it's about embracing diversity, because we know that to do this business, it's a cross-border one, right? It's not. We know the first requirement is that not all the brands want to liquidate domestically, because they don't want to upset their current, channels.
Hmm.
So there is an export opportunity. Therefore, we'll be working with different markets. Till date, we've already gotten offers for the inventory across 20, or what it was, it already 45 different countries, not mistaken, today. So we're dealing with different markets, different environment, different cultures, right? So embracing diversity, and that's why we set up our manpower post COVID. We know that there's an opportunity for us to work remotely and tap into diverse talents across different markets, and that's how we set up our team. Our team is spread across a few markets. We have Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and India for now.
Wonderful.
So
And so are you fully remote, or do you also have a entity in Singapore?
we have an entity in Singapore, definitely, and we also set up local entity in those markets.
Wonderful. Great to hear that, because I'm hearing so much about the remote working conditions right now. Of course, it's a big topic, right? And some of the larger organizations are pulling people back into the office. Certainly, there's a lot of people that are unhappy about that. And so I'm curious, with this remote setup, are you finding there's any difference for you versus having people there face to face as a leader?
Well, there's in an ideal world, I would love to have different hubs, right? One in Singapore, one in Philippines, one in Indonesia, across the markets that we have, like sort of sales offices. Given the nature of where we are today as a company, and we chose to be very efficient with the capital that we received, and we think that there is an opportunity. We really see the opportunity to be a profitable business, and therefore we made certain management decision to kind of with a decision to kind of to set up remote work, right? But of course, we have had to be creative as well with how we engage the employees. How do we build work processes around the remote culture work model? So we use a lot of documentation tools. We set up different meetings, rituals around check-ins, and we have coffee chats, virtual coffee chats. We also set up surveys to check on an employee on a quarterly basis how they're feeling about certain things. How are they supported to do their job? Now, I wouldn't say we are perfect, right? We're still work in progress. We want to do better. We want to give people ultimately we want to give people autonomy to do their work. There's a lot of trust to do their work, and you're seeing the results, right? You're seeing the result. It doesn't matter whether you're in the office or you're wherever at home. People are doing their jobs. However, one thing that we really miss is in-person check-ins. And starting this quarter, we are making the effort to kind of put teams together in a nice place in the country, to get together, to work together, have a very focused work session together, and then also some recreation, right? For example, the team in Indonesia are gathering in Bandung next week. somewhere, mountainous area, a nice, I would say, bungalow, and to have some work session, to cooking together, and then maybe going for a hike near the mountains. So we are investing, right? Not a lot, but it's necessary. It's part of bringing people together, because working too long, and remote, it doesn't cut it. Like, for example, now we're talking virtually. It'd be nice if we are chatting in person, right? So we want to have a bit of that in-person exchange, and we created a survey. We found out that employees in their feedback when it comes to face-to-face interaction, they would like to see at least on a quarterly basis, if not monthly for some of them. Some of them are introverts, so they're like, no, I don't want to be in person monthly basis. I want to do my work, especially engineers, right? Meetings are too disruptive. In fact, they say too many meetings, less meetings, right?
I've heard that a lot too. Yes, over the past few years, I've
Yeah,
certainly heard
yeah.
from
So we have to keep
engineers that sometimes they can't get any work done because they have
right.
meetings.
And the surveys are automated, as part of Slack. It's just many tools we can use these days to build a positive remote work culture.
Yeah. Well, I love the sound of that. That sounds, like it's a great idea to bring everyone together on a quarterly basis, and perhaps next year I'll be able to join you on one of those.
Yes.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
And you mentioned curiosity is such a big part of the values. When people are working remotely, when they have questions, what do you find the best way has been to address those questions? Is it through speaking, through meetings, or is it more, you know, uh, not necessarily being connected at the same time and just using chat functions? What do you use to communicate?
Well, we have a rule. This is something we have a rule, right? So we can have values, and then the touch points doesn't really exemplify those values, right? So we have a rule, a Slack rule, which is if you have more than 5 lines that you're typing on Slack, get on a call. Get on a
Interesting.
call. Get on a call and eliminate the noise, because there's a tendency for us to like type and assume the person will read and understand your context. But we're
Mhm.
missing, a lot of the nonverbal cues. We're missing a lot of the richer context, right? Especially we're working across diverse teams, like the team in India and team in Philippines, team in Indonesia may have different contextual cues, for example, right? We know that. We've seen that. So we said if it's more than 5 lines, pick up the phone and call each other. That's why Slack has the huddle function. Okay, invite someone into a huddle and have a conversation. So I do that often even with my senior engineer. I do that often even with my C-suite. So C-suites are different, right? We make effort to meet once a week at the start of the not once a week, actually twice a week, at the start of the week, and then Thursday just before Friday to recap the week, to provide accountability in terms of the goals that we said we're going to achieve for the various different departments that we set out to achieve. How can we improve? So it's sort of a spring, we would say, retro and stream review, part of the product development process, right? We really look to measure and track our performance, even on the leadership team. So we schedule meetings for different things. For example, there's a meeting just to report every Monday. We call it Monday Elephants meeting, Elephants call, right? Weekly Monday Elephants call. Why elephants? Because we used to start tracking the business waste in terms of the size of the elephants. So the size of one, I would say, African elephant is about 6 to 7 tons, right? So we have
Yeah.
maybe about, at some point we have like 30. We liquidated like 33 elephants worth of business waste, potential
Wow.
business. So that's a lot. Imagine once the size of, I think, even one big elephant. You would imagine, you can compare that into the size of seven, was it seven football fields or something.
Mhm.
So we gotta use some kind of visual way to measure, and that's what we call it. We have the Monday Elephants call for everyone to report the work in progress, the goals, and what you're working on, what help you need. And then we have the more in-depth discussions, right? Like weekly across my portfolio. We call it PDUCs, product design, engineering, UX. We meet to really take a deeper look on the stuff that we're working on. So there's more of like brainstorm, let's discuss. Other than that, there's the one-on-ones. We just check, hey, what sort of support you need, manager to employee. What support you need? How are you feeling? Right. So we have to do that just to make sure people are okay and they're feeling supported to do their work, especially remote, right? It's
Mhm.
a tendency to feel like you're alone, you're in a room. But we've also started to put people together, especially in their team, because they are so far apart. Every week they would meet at a co-working space. For now, we can't force them, to all sit in an office because they don't want. So meet every Monday, at a co-working space, work together. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I was curious because I'm hearing different things now, and I'm seeing some people are really suggesting to work asynchronously.
Hmm.
And for me, as a leadership coach, I've often found that when I'm working with leaders who are moving from face-to-face
Hmm.
leadership, say being a local leader in Australia to leading a
Hmm.
team across a whole region or globally, that having those strong relationships and having those conversations is an important part of being
Yes.
able to lead a remote team. So I'm on the same page as you with just picking up the phone and having those conversations. I've also had some clients tell me that they're finding some of the younger generations aren't necessarily happy to receive phone calls. They just want to text. So I don't know if you have seen any of that at all, but I thought that was interesting because they're
Yeah, I
having
mean,
some
I
challenges
mean, yeah,
around that.
right. I'm an older millennial, so I may like the more rigid sort of go to your office and do your work kind of thing, right? But I have to embrace the new normal here, and we have people who are at the younger millennials or even younger than younger millennials. I don't know what you call them. I forgot. Generation, was it the generation after the younger millennials, right? The nineties born kids, right? Or millennial 2000. We have a few of them, and they're just resistant to go into the office. Like, I can do my job, like I can get this done, right? So why do you want to force me to go office? I have to invest in nice outfits, but at home I can just wear t-shirts and shorts. I'm comfortable, I'll do my job.
Yeah, that's the point, right? You're saving them some money.
Yeah, saving money, I can use that to buy myself a nicer desk, or a
Yeah.
mouse, for example, gaming mouse.
That's an interesting point you're making, yeah, because since I've started working remotely for the last 10 years, I certainly haven't bought that many, office clothes.
Well,
So,
to think of it that way, right? If we're really into sustainability, what we're saying, fashion is the biggest number one, environment polluter, right? Fashion industry. Not that we wouldn't want to deal with that industry yet. Right? In fact, our COO, his background was from Levi's. He was doing liquidation for Levi's, and he was saying how fashion is it's just sheer amount of clothes. The fast fashion movement is just making people buy. In Singapore, you
mhm.
would actually have to buy new clothes every month. It's insane. Do you even need? You need to change
Yeah,
your
it's
clothes every
true.
month? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Orchard Road, right? This was the place
Yes.
to
Yes.
be, and it was a very popular destination in Singapore when I was going there for work. Everybody would go to Orchard Road.
So the point is, employees are not stupid; they are smart. They can use this argument and say, "Hey, we're a sustainable company, and I think it's good. I'm saving on clothes. I'm not buying more clothes."
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah,
I'm also curious about because I've seen all of this move towards recycling, um, and goods being sold as if they were recycled, but they're only partially recycled. I saw an article about this recently. Do you
yeah.
have any insights on that? And I know that it's not related to your business, but I'm curious if you have any exposure to what's happening there.
Oh wow, we are researching. We are researching the space, and we would, which is why I said one of the go-to-market ways is definitely to appeal to what manufacturers want, which is we know there's we need to achieve the alignment with them in terms of cost recovery, strategic alignment, right? If not, there will not be pollen business, right? Because we got to make it work somehow. It's an imperfect solution. We have to sell first, as so that we can prevent the excess inventory of becoming business waste. But at the same time, what are the other channels to deal with, or what are the other options? I don't want to call it channels. That's why, to give them optionality in terms of what do they do, even if at the end of the day some biscuits are not being sold. What do we do with them, right? So the second option is definitely through donations. That is assuming there's still some type of shelf life left, right? Some amount of shelf life left. But what happens if there's no shelf
Mhm.
life? What do we do with that? So potentially creating an ecosystem of recycling partners across the different markets, so that we can actually provide a work stream or a workflow digitized to kind of work with those partners. So a lot of the recycling partners, they work with 3BL logistic partners to make sure that in each country, in each prefecture, like even in Japan, right, we have Sagawa, right, picking up all the potential business waste, from retailers, and also from, I think mainly retailers, not yet manufacturers, right?
Mhm.
Retailers, to make sure that they are either being disposed, or are they being disposed to be recycled, or they are going to go to get burned, incinerated. So in Japan, interestingly, it's about 78% of the goods that they collect, getting burned. 70% of the stuff get burned, right? So what happens to the other 20 21 sorry 22%, right? We were wondering, did you bury it, or what do you do with it, right? You can actually prevent it from getting burned. So I
Mhm.
suspect, and what I learned, it's definitely scrap, right? Recycling, um, you know, repurposing some of those industrial waste or even consumer waste into more sustainable, I would say, businesses who are taking those waste products to make into new products. Like, for example, plastics. We know Adidas has done a great job of actually recycling plastics and made them into shoes, clothes. So there are some companies that are doing that. So we're researching. First, we're going to market with selling, because we understand if the goods can still be sold, let's sell them. Second is, if there are no options to sell and it's fast approaching the expiry date, how do we donate? How do we actually handle donation process uh, cross border, right? How do we do that? It's the same workflow as when you're selling. It's not so easy to kind of say donate, no, because I think we're dealing with depreciating assets. Everything has to be filed, has to be reported. So to even prevent greenwashing, that's why I said businesses now are looking for ways to provide that data, to say that they're not they're actually also dealing with the business waste in a sustainable way, and what are some sustainable practices around dealing with business waste, and what is the raw data to prove that they did not actually throw and did not burn those business waste.
Liyana, I'd love to just, finish up by asking you, for anyone that might be, because I believe Pollen's been 5 years in existence now. Is that correct? Or so,
Well,
around.
it's been 5 years for us founders trying to solve the problem, trying to work with the market,
Mhm.
right? But this business has just started the past 12 months, really. We're getting the traction the past
Wow.
12 months
Okay.
because, like I said, strategic alignment.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so, is there anything? What would really be the most help that you could possibly get to get more traction on this right now? Is there anything that comes to
Oh,
mind?
yes. I think we realized that to really scale this business, we cannot do without automation. We have to have, we need to invest in the data science team. We need to invest in automation of workflows, meaning that we need to build the integrations between all the partners we see potentially helping us create and solidify the value, right?
Hmm.
Meaning that the value in terms of providing more optionality in terms of dealing with business waste, like I mentioned, selling is one of them, liquidating, and then donation, and then recycling. So we need to build the integrations, and now companies have to digitize their workflows. So think about it in terms of building bridges between one workflow to another. Like, for example, if we want to work with 3PL logistic partners in each of the market,
Hmm.
how well can we automate the workflow instead of doing it manually? Okay, this is the best price for the buyer in this market. So it took us 5 years, honestly, because it's different. At different stage, we saw a different problem and we tried to solve it. It's only until later we realized that everything started to come together and realized that, hey, this is not something that Pollen can do ourselves. We need to create an ecosystem of partners. We need to make sure that we work together to provide the data transparency in terms of where stuff end up, what's the amount of business waste we have to liquidate, and what's the distance it travel to the different countries to provide a more accurate reporting data in terms of scope 1, scope 2, ESG reporting. So this is definitely going to be a 3-5 year rollout, and that's why we are also still in the midst to figure out what are the levers we have in the business that we can still operate efficiently, but also raise some type of capital, maybe work with some impact investors to build out this ecosystem over the next 3-5 years.
Awesome. I love that you're sharing that it's the partnerships that in the end are making a huge difference, because this has been a realization of mine as well, just watching what's happening out there. And that, to me, it comes down to relationships and these partnerships as being the way that we can all expand our footprint and support each other in our missions, and especially, as impact-driven businesses, where we have a very strong mission, and we stick by that mission through the ups and downs. What's your best? I think that's really important, right? That highlight, for anyone that's starting out in the sustainability field and really wants to start up in this area. What's really your best advice to get off the ground?
I think a job at experimentation mindset. Know that your first draft doesn't have to be your final solution, right? Of course, we are wearing, environmentalist NGO clothes underneath. We still have to wear the business suit outside. We have to go into the boardrooms and convince the stakeholders of the MNCs who are dealing with the problem how to solve the problem together, right? And we can go in with just our echo chamber of saying, hey, you guys are not doing a good job. You guys, have a lot of business waste. You guys are pulling the environment. No, we have to stop that rhetoric. We have to go in and say, let me understand your problem. What are you trying to achieve, right? How can we help you? What are some options do you have to solve this problem? Oh, we found out they don't have any options. What they're dealing with? Oh, I don't have anyone looking at this. I'm one supply chain manager and I'm tasked to clear the warehouse. How do I do my job better? Right? So putting that hat of, being curious, being creative, being critical, being a critical thinker. 3 C's, right? Putting your 3 C's, your curiosity, creativity, and your critical thinking skills. And adopt a mindset of experimentation. Know that your first draft is not your final solution, which is why Pollen has been 5 years, right? But the business has only started to get traction in the past 1 year. Is because we sat down and have the conversation with the target customer that we're trying to solve this problem first. So we realized that the MNCs have the largest impact if we help them solve this problem, not the smaller brands, not us consumers saving, by drinking water from, drinking less, by using less plastic straws. But really, we know who are struggling to solve this problem, right? Who have the single biggest impact, and we help them solve the problem. So they may think their problem space may look different from what you think the problem is. So that's why it's better for us to kind of sit in the room together and discuss and be really open to their perspectives as well. So adopt a mindset of experimentation, put on your 3 C's, curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking hats.
Great. Thank you, Liyana. I really appreciate your time today. I know it's very precious and you've got lots of work to do. And I think it's also, valuable for you to share some of your learnings with the folks out there who are also interested in sustainability, perhaps in considering their own startup. I think that, we've shared a lot of valuable tips today in terms of leadership as well as running a business. And it's been great to get a bit more insight into Pollen and what you're working on there. So thank you again for your time.
Yeah, it's been my absolute pleasure, Kasia. Like always, I've always enjoyed having this leadership chats with you. And I'm very happy to be doing this podcast with you.
Great. All right. Well, we'll continue next year. I'd love to hear how things progress. And I'm sure that this is going to be a big year for Pollen and the team.
Yes, it is really looking to be. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Liyana.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening.